with chapter 9 today, called Pathfinders, and we're going to be finding out what's happened after the end of the chapter yesterday, where Ash and his guardian Toby were going to be exiled. So, a large Mersu stepped from the deck and began clunking down the gangplank. Ash had seen a Mersu Pathfinder many moons ago, but it didn't lessen the wonder at seeing these strange walrus-like creatures again. She had a peg leg, which looked to be more of a log leg, it was so big, and a very casual swagger for someone who'd so nearly been chopped by leviathans. Her scrappy armour revealed bare, leathery arms, and Mersu's blubber kept them from feeling the cold like humankin did, or so Ash had been told, but it was still a surprising sight. By Aurora, did you see how close that was? She asked the crowd. Course you did. You were right there after all. Thought I was going to lose more than my rudder there. Isn't that right, Master Pod? She asked the small, upstanding-looking Vulpes, who followed close behind, his fox-like ears and bushy tail poking out of his patchwork clothing. Indeed, Captain, he said in a surprisingly deep voice. That's why you're my first mate, Master Pod. You know what you're talking about. Make no mistake. We are delighted to welcome you to the Fear of Stronghold, Pathfinders, Kindle boomed, opening his arms wide in greeting, hiding the tension of moments ago well. Captain Nook of the sleigh known as the Frostheart, if I remember correctly? You do indeed, Alderman, said the Mersu Pathfinder, shaking his hand so vigorously it looked like he was going to be pulled off his feet. Pleasure as always. The rest of Captain Nook's crew joined her before the expectant villagers. Ash's already very sad heart sank even lower when No Fear of Pathfinder stepped off the sleigh to scoop him up into their arms. Ash knew it had been a long shot, hoping for his parents to be aboard, but he still felt a stab of disappointment. Instead, there were a few shaken-looking men and women who seemed like they hailed from strongholds all around the snow sea, dressed in the ragtag clothing Ash only ever saw with the rare arrival of such crews. To Ash's surprise, there was also a girl only a little older than him. Her head was half-shaved, half-sprouting long dreadlocks. Oddest of all was a man in dark tattered robes laced with an ancient archaeomech who followed the rest. He looked like he'd walked straight out of the wilds. His turquoise eyes were so bright they seemed to glow, made all the brighter by the dark sockets they were set within. They darted about the stronghold, taking it all in like a hawk searching for its prey. He seemed amused at something, a wolfish grin never once leaving his narrow, sharp face. While the rest of the crew looked like hardened travellers, Ash thought this guy seemed like he'd seen more than most. Toby would have spoken of a giant mountain cat back in the Yeti lands, and this was how Ash imagined they would look if they had long matted hair. And a beard, of course. Alderman Kindle stepped forward importantly. It has been, 6-7 years since your last run here? But your timing could not be more fortuitous. We are in desperate need of supplies from the outside world. Try telling that to my sleigh, poor pup, Nook said, as if in response a plank fell from the sleigh's ruined frame. Indeed, Kindle said. That was dangerously close, although all too common in these parts, sadly. There was a time when we were visited by many a sleigh, but we're lucky to see any but you these days. The leviathans around here have become even more hostile over the last few decades, though what's stirring them is anyone's guess. The Fearer crowd watched the exchange in awed silence. Ash seemed to have been all but forgotten for the time being. Same all over the world. I take no pleasure in telling you, Captain Nook said. Ever more livid they get, and they were already really fuming to begin with. Still, I must say, I'm not at all surprised we're the only Pathfinders who have made the run out here in a while. You really are out in the middle of nowhere. I'm sure I don't have to tell you. Took us moons to get out this far, but we assumed you could probably do with the help up north. Oh! A shadow fell over the captain's face. Have your lookouts keep their eyes peeled. You have wraiths prowling nearby. The scoundrels nearly spotted us, but we were lucky enough to give them the slip. I certainly hope we've not used all the luck we have. Wraiths, a threat nearly as terrible as the leviathans, or so it was said. Ash had never witnessed a raid from the monstrous pirates himself, which was a good thing, really, considering the tales Pathfinders told. They were not stories you wanted to hear while you were eating your dinner. And as for those blasted hurtlers running us ragged, Captain Nook continued, one thing after the other, I tell you. They followed us for miles, which is highly unusual, I might add. They're racers, not stamina beasts, although you wouldn't know it watching that lot. She shook her head as though she could still scarcely believe it. Well, we thank you for your great bravery and honour, Kindle said. I'm glad, Alderman, I truly am, Captain Nook said. But I'd sooner ask who it was that saved us. We would have been Hurtler Chow were it not for them. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. "Well, it was our courageous hunters, of course. No finer marksmen will find you in these parts," Kindle replied, a bit too loudly. Ash noticed him making a get-out-of-here gesture to Tobu, who was more than happy to oblige, and began pulling meaningfully on Ash's furs. Clearly, the Stronghold didn't want to let the Pathfinders know that the Fira were harbouring a Songweaver. Probably because he thinks I'll scare them off. Ash was trying to resist Tobu's less than subtle tugs on his hood, but it wasn't doing him much good. "I was most impressed with their shooting, most impressed indeed," said the Mersu captain heartily. "But it is not what I mean, appreciated though it is. I mean the one who was singing their lungs out from the top of the wall." The crowd held its breath. Alderman Kindle was at a loss for words. A shot of excitement whipped through Ash. The captain didn't seem scared of him, quite the opposite. Toby began to pull harder on his furs, pushing through the crowd. Ash wriggled in protest, trying to hear what was being said. Kindle gave a nervous laugh. "Singing? Oh, I don't think so. There's no Songweaver here. Well, if that's what you mean. Oh, I suppose it must have been the Valkyries of my clan singing me to the afterlife as my days came to a close then. I'm getting old, you see. I hear them singing quite often these days, unless, of course, I'm not dying yet, and the boy that Yeti over there is so eager to get away from us happens to be the one that saved me and my crew." Tobu froze. Ash didn't know what to do. Should he agree or keep quiet? He looked at the alderman, who opened and closed his mouth like a fish, obviously feeling at as much of a loss as Ash. "Okay, fine. The boy is a Songweaver," Kindle finally admitted. The villagers stirred around them, many gripping their sunstone talismans for protection. Ash even saw someone spit on the ground not too far from where he was standing. "Ugh. Bouncing blubberballs, is that so?" Captain Nook looked impressed. "Well now, you don't see too many of them running around the place, and that's a fact Master Pod wouldn't mind telling you." The small Vulpus gave him a little nod at her side. "I wouldn't indeed, Captain." "Yes, but the boy is of the Fira," Kindle said, "and we'll deal with him the Fira way. You can rely on that." "And what way is that?" Ash wondered with a shudder. "There is no reason for this to affect future visits from your sleigh," Kindle continued, speaking a bit too fast and betraying his nerves. "Aurora does not have to concern itself with us in this regard." "Aye, well, calm yourself, Alderman. I shan't be blabbering to the council or anything. Of that you have my word." Captain Nook looked towards Ash. "Many thanks to you, dear boy. You did a brave thing, and we, the crew of the Frostheart, won't soon forget it." "Aye!" the crew yelled, raising their fists in thanks. "Hear, hear!" called out the wild-looking man, despite the clear discomfort in the Fira audience. Ash suspected the man might have even been enjoying it. Ash, too, couldn't help himself. He grinned from ear to ear and nodded back at Captain Nook and her crew. The wild-looking man's grin seemed to grow even larger. He stared with great intensity at Ash, who was then yanked away by Tobu, whose expression, as usual, was grim. "If the Pathfinders are grateful for my song weaving, surely the Fira will have to see the good I did too," Ash thought hopefully. "They'll have to understand, right?" End of chapter 9.